Genesis. And then the other passage where he talks about putting Adam into that sleep and creating Eve, and then he sees Eve and observes her and says, wow. And then the first thing he tells them to do, have a family. Have some children. Not just some children, lots of children. Fill the earth. So we see immediately what he wants to have happen with man and woman. And why does he make them in that way? And again, we're talking mostly about masculinity. The masculinity I just described is to be at the service of the family. That's the reason for it. Not to dominate the family, but at its service in various different ways. And obviously, right off, we might talk about protection. In John Paul II's Theology of the Body, he points out that woman's greatest need, woman's greatest desire is to be protected. She seeks protection. Okay, so principally, the protection of his wife, of his soulmate, but also of his children, obviously. To protect the weak. We just described who's the weaker of the two. So the man being the stronger would be there to protect the weak, those of his family. And we see that need at different parts in history, different levels of civilization and development of civilization. Because in the past, what you've had, and maybe some today, you may have situations where someone has established a home and has found his homeland, especially in history. And then he finds that there are outside forces that are trying to invade that area. And so that he is protecting them and maintaining his homeland, he goes out and he becomes part of a military force to protect his homeland. He joins with the other men and they go out and fight the battle. Again, to protect the weak. Or if we think about when the family has to be out on a journey, they'll need protection. I was reading a book, in the process of reading a book about St. Joseph. And it points out the journey he had to make from Nazareth to Bethlehem with the Blessed Mother for the census, and then the Lord would soon be born once they arrived, which was a dangerous journey. So they probably, in all likelihood, traveled with a caravan of other families and had the men who would watch over their families in the night. There might be bandits that would attack, and out in those outlying areas. So they have that protection. Exploration, and throughout history of look at our very own country. At a certain point, it starts off. Main settling began in New England, and then there was this urge, this drive, this adventure for men to explore the Wild West, the westward movement, the westward expansion. That's men, not being satisfied with the status quo, looking for something more. What else is out there? What else is out there for us to do? So there they go, bringing their families along with them, having to protect as they go across the Wild West. These things took a lot of energy, a lot of exertion, power, strength. You couldn't be sitting there complacent, wherever it is that they were, but had to have a drive to go and do that. Couldn't be sitting back on the couch playing the Game Boy. They had to get it and go. So today, in a protection of our families, we have our own ways where we need to have that protection that we take care of. First of all, think about the protection of the dignity of our wives and daughters. The way society today puts women to use, and the things that are imposed upon women in general. We are to protect our wives and daughters from these things. You know, think about journeying, we just talked about. A woman is much more vulnerable when she's out walking on the street, just out about, whenever she is not accompanied by a man. So there again, that masculinity, that protection that we can offer. You know, personally, I won't want my wife going out at night anywhere by herself without me or one of my larger sons. You know, it's a vulnerability that I don't want to risk. And then the guarding of the protection of our children in the way of their morals. This is one that's very insidious. It can be very creepy and can easily slip in if we don't have our guard up. So we should be always there, cautious, protecting those things that could slip into our family, slip into our homes, that could bring down their moral stature. Next, the idea of providing. We have protection now, providing the provision. In Genesis, God places the burden upon man to provide for his family. It's a very, very important responsibility. Food, shelter, and clothing for the family, for the wife and children. It's an undue burden to place this upon the wife, upon the mother of the family. She has her own assignment, her own role, what it is that God called her to do in a marriage. And finally, formation. The forming of the children. And it's most effective that they be formed by seeing that example, that clear distinction of masculinity and femininity in the home between mom and dad. They learn much better by observation, osmosis, than from lecture. What they see is what they're going to imitate. And also, discipline is part of formation. The dad has the chief role of discipline in the family. And his physical makeup goes right along with that. You know, having the deep voice, having the size and strength, especially when the children are young and they see that distinction, they see that difference, they see the power of dad and how they have to respect him. And as they get older, then again, the protection, we see the young sons becoming teens and may be feeling a bit of that aggression coming on and are tempted to maybe, possibly, disrespect their mother. It's not to be allowed. In my home, they always will respect my wife. So that's part of the formation. And then the third thing we want to talk about is developing that masculinity in our children, in our sons.